Hello, my name is Attila Pastor and I'm cellist and product manager at Thomastik Infeld. As I was writing this speech, I was frequently reminded of my time as a student and budding professional musician. In terms of my tools, which were my instrument and my bow, it was a time of constant searching. Although my teachers provided me with support when it came to question of my instrument, the tips were not very helpful. If something doesn't work well, you have to practice more. If the response is bad, you have to work on your technique. But just wait until you get an Stradivari cello and an expensive bow. Then the instrument will practically play itself. While I was still a young student, I was in fact given an Andrea Amati cello from the year 1573 on loan. However, a miracle product it was not. It did not resonate well and I was fighting against a sharp, bright tone and little body. Back then, I didn't have yet enough knowledge about the importance of strings and only an experienced luthier was able to get the cello under control. Why am I telling you all this? We musicians are always striving to optimize our technique and our sound. However, we regularly come up against the limits of our tools. Typical problems include a poor response, a lack of volume, color or focus, a wolf tone or a whistling string. When we musicians are struggling with problems like these, we tend to go to solutions we already know. Spending more money on a new instrument, a new bow, or doubling our practice time. But we can improve our sound and performance by knowing our ideal string setup and following a few simple tricks. As announced in my teaser, I would like to share these tips and tricks with you. I'm sure you have described your sound plenty of times. Sonorous, soft, flute-like, airy, metallic, brilliant, pure or muffled. You as the musician are responsible for all these different tonal qualities. However, your performance also depends on tools that influence this sound to varying percentages of importance. First and foremost is the instrument and its setup of 59%, closely followed by the strings on 23%. After this comes the bow on 14% and last of all the rosin on 4%. Let's run through these from the lowest to the highest, starting with the importance of the rosin and the bow. Without rosin, the bow strokes would not work. What surprises me the most was the fact that many musicians use too little rosin. But only when there is sufficient friction and adhesion between the bow hair and the string can the bow make the string sing. So please take care of your bow and the bow hairs. Rosin sticks to the bow hairs. Because of this, individual bow hairs end up sticking to each other, intensifying the bow noise as a result. For this reason, we recommend carefully brushing the bow hair using a soft toothbrush approximately once a week. The ideal rosin is suited to the string's plate and to the climatic conditions. More information about this topic is available at stringintelligence.com. The correct strings are a performance booster and the second biggest influencer. So we really need to give them some thought. They influence the sound beam, the sound color, the sound projection, bow noise, dynamic range, your ability to modulate color, and the metal factor in your sound. But they also influence the bow hand feeling, the bow response, as well as the left hand feeling. The instrument and string sound are only able to truly flourish when the string tensions are correctly selected, and the pressure is therefore ideally attuned to the plate and the shape of the instrument. The correct string tension does not put too much strain to the instrument. But what is important for the ideal string setup? First, You don't need loud strings. You need simply strings with a good projection. We know from experience that systems, instrument, bow, string, sounding very loud to the ear cannot be heard well to the audience. The ideal string setup is characterized by a high modulation ability of the strings as well as a fast range of sound colors. It responds to all changes in the way of playing with the expected change in character and quality. Because the expectations of each player are different, the ideal string setup varies from artist to artist. Third, make sure that the sound volume is balanced throughout all 4 strings. And the last tip, the ideal string setup is achieved when the upper strings sound radiant and have adequate overtones, and when the lower strings sound broad and full of colors according to the register. Of course, the instrument itself on 59% has the greatest influence on the sound and deserves a chapter by its own. But we won't go into more detail on this today. However, in general can be said that an expensive instrument can sound bad with the wrong strings, and a more affordable instrument can achieve a beautiful tone with the right strings. It is important to know, therefore, that changing just one single string can alter the instrument's tone and the remaining string setup. Let me give you an example. Your instrument sounds too dull, too quiet, or simply not open enough. So what can you do about it? In principle, as the string tension increases, the more direct an instrument sounds, but also increasingly dull. With too much pressure, it loses volume. Taking the tension off an instrument makes them sound freer, but with too little pressure, the sound loses density and depth and becomes increasingly thin and nasal. Check the string tension of your current string setup. Now choose a string setup with a lower string tension. Taking the strain off the instrument will strengthen the high tones while the sound becomes brighter and livelier with less pressure. The instrument can also be tuned by choosing a string that sounds either warmer or brighter. When it comes to changing strings, here at Thomastik Infeld we are asked not only which strings are right for the specific instrument and playing style, but also how often strings should actually be changed. There is no hard and fast rule here. Different string types, for example, gut strings, synthetic core strings, steel strings, as well as their specific design, can be used for different lengths of time. The intensity of your playing, your technique, your daily practice time, the pungency of your sweat, climatic condition, and structural conditions of the instrument will influence how long a specific string will last. Simply trust your ear. If you feel your strings don't sound like they did before or don't respond as well as they used to, then change them. I am going to use 3 cello A strings to demonstrate what they sound like after they have been played for different lengths of time. Today I brought you 3 different A strings which had been played for a different length of time. The oldest one, which I will start now, it had been played for 6 months. You will notice that the sound is muffled, a little bit narrow. Let's have an example. had to add that the older the string, the worse the response. So you also notice response is really hard here, and the sound is not open, not singing. Let's go to the second string. This string has been played for 1 month and is in its prime. The sound is rich, full of overtones. The dynamic spectrum is much bigger than from the other string, and all instruments sound much more open and singing. I have also to notice that a string, which is in its prime, is much easier to play. It supports you with the right dynamic, and the colors are inspiring you. Let's go to the next one. This is a completely new string and hasn't been broken in yet. The sound is fresh and direct, and after the breaking in period, it gets a more fuller and more rounder singing sound. Let's get an impression. After you played this string for some time, it gets a more flexible character. To make the breaking in phase shorter, you can play the string instantly and the bridge with a lot of pressure, like this. This doesn't sound well, but it really speeds up the breaking in time. I can do it a few times, and you can listen to the change immediately now to the sound. You see it getting freer and more singing, more round, full of overtones. When talking about the lifespan of a string, we need to differentiate between the tonal and the mechanical lifespan. The tonal lifespan means that the string is still in complete mechanical working order, but the sound has changed. The end of the mechanical lifespan means that the string itself is damaged and breaks or even snaps. To prevent this from happening, the grooves on the bridge and nuts have to be adapted to the diameter of the string. That's because the string that is too thick can get stuck. It's also important that enough graphite has been applied to the nuts and on the bridge, and that the arches and edges are adapted. Please always pay attention to this. Each time you change strings, it's important to check the position of the bridge. The rear of it should be at a 90-degree angle to the soundboard and may need adjusting after a string change. If the bridge is misaligned, this can reduce the sound quality, make the response considerably worse, and lead to a nasal sound. This occurs especially frequently if the strings has dug too deep into the wood of the bridge, cannot move in the notches because not enough graphite has been applied, or because the notches are too tight. For today, I have brought along 7 E strings of various diameters. Different material and playing technique leads to difference in sound spectra and possibilities. To demonstrate them, we have invited a special guest, the great violinist David Frühwirth.
Hi, my name is David Frühwirth. I'm originally from Salzburg. I'm so glad to be part of this sound project from Thomastik Infeld Strings. Today, it's about the E strings, and we brought you several different ones. I've been working for the company for the last 20 years on sound testing, string testings, and trust me, I've learned so much about it. How much the strings can actually help and the violin and enhance the sound possibilities. I will start off with the Spirit E string, which is the lightweight. And it has a very round, ringing sound, overtones, and it reacts on the tiniest performance changes from the player. And it gives the other string a very pleasant and easy response. We will continue with the Infeld Red, which is gold-plated, and it has a slightly higher tension than Spirit. I really enjoy it a lot. It has a very clear and broad sound. But it also has a deep impact on the other strings. It gives a deeper and rounder and almost broader feeling to the rest of the strings. Next in line today is a Vision solo string, which is a tin-plated one and has even higher tension than Infeld Red. So it brings a very bright and dense character to the sound. But it also gives the other string a more direct impact. The next string I will be playing is the Rondo E string. It has the second highest tension, 8.2 kilograms, and it will bring a very direct and brilliant sound and very good bow response, even in high density playing. And even for the other strings, it will add the very direct bow response and very focused sound. Now I will be playing the Peter Infeld strings, which actually 3 different ones we have, and I will start off with the golden one. The Peter Infeld have the highest tension, 8.3 kilograms, so I would call them the heavyweight, and the powerful E string, which will add another kick to your performance. It has a very direct sound, powerful, but also because of the gold, it adds a lot of kind of colors in the midsection of the sound waves. And many people, or many violinists, worry about whistling on E strings. Don't worry too much about it. Just make sure you don't curve the bow too much on the side, because it's about the beginning of the sound, so good bow contact is necessary. And it will also add, for the other strings, a very round sound, but very direct overtones. Second in line from the Peter Infeld E strings is the platinum plated one, which has the same tension, but because of the metal combination, it adds a certain, I would call it kind of light beam sound, very sound centered, very focused. But it also adds to the lower string the same focus, but with a very even sound colors. The last string today we have is the platinum plated Peter Infeld string, which has the same weight as the other Peter Infeld E strings, 8.3 kilograms. But because of the tin plated version, it doesn't push the sound too much like the platinum plated one. But it also adds a very homogeneous sound character to the rest of the strings. This was it for me today. I really enjoyed it to play for you some of the different E strings we have from Thomastik Infeld Company. I hope you learned a bit how much influence it has for your instrument and also for the other strings. All the best, enjoy. Bye.
Now you have heard how the focus, tonal character, volume and resonance of an instrument change with different E strings. Let's stay with the E strings. As we all know, these have a tendency to whistle. In general, we can say the more clear and brilliant an E string sounds, the more likely it is to whistle. In turn, the darker and more focused the string, the less is the tendency of it to whistle. Of all types of strings, gold-plated strings have a particular tendency to whistle. The reason for this is easily explained. Because of the gold plating, the cooling down temperature of the rosin is very fast. The result of this effect, the rosin has too little grip on the surface of the string. An insider tip, the platinum-plated E-string Peter Infeld is a good compromise between a tin-plated and a gold-plated E-string. It whistles less than a gold-plated E-string, but has similar clearness and response. The bowing technique and the condition of the rosin and bow hair has a major influence on the whistling of an E-string. In addition, an E-string's tendency to whistle depends heavily on the individual instrument. But don't worry. On the whole, it's easy to get whistling E-strings under control. To reduce a whistling E-string, we first recommend mixing violin and viola rosin together in a ratio of 1:1. Viola rosin is firmer, and this combination allows a better response. In addition, a sleeve on this E-string can not only make the string sound warmer, but can similarly also minimize the whistling. Although sometimes, unfortunately, it can also increase it. The only way to know it, try it out. The string tension also has an influence on the E-string whistling. For an E-string of average tension, I would advise you to use a string of the same string type with less tension. However, if the whistling increases as a result, you should try a higher string tension. Careful when reaching for a string with a higher string tension. We don't want to overload the instrument, as this can lead to a loss of tone as well as damage the instrument. If you are not sure, always contact a trusted luthier or the string experts at Thomastik Infeld. Another well-known problem is the Wolf tone, loved by cellists, dreaded by the violinist. But what exactly is a Wolf tone? The Wolf tone is caused by the interaction of a string and soundboard vibration. When the vibration of the string and the soundboard do not match, the vibration collapses. A Wolf tone occurs on instruments whose soundboard has a too little damping. But why do cellists and bass players embrace Wolf tones while violin and viola players do not? To produce lots of sound colors and overtones, a cello needs a Wolf tone and a bass needs a number of Wolf tones. However, violins and violas do not. The reason is the size of the instrument. To be exact, the relationship between the soundboard size and the soundboard thickness. The larger the instrument, the thinner the soundboard in comparison. As a result, the damping is reduced. Find out more on Thomastik Infeld's stringintelligence.com. In general, the Wolf tone should only ever be tamed. If it is completely eliminated, it also destroys the tonal colors and the brilliance. As to which measures work, this actually depends on the instrument, but we always advise to proceed step by step. First, check the condition of the bow hair and make sure to change it regularly, at least every 6 months. Second, use a sticky rosin for your practice, as this can often tame a wolf. When playing violin, mix violin and viola rosin. Playing viola, mix viola and cello rosin. Playing the cello, mix the cello and the bass rosin. A mixing ratio up to 1:1 applies to all combinations. Third, a Wolf tone eliminator is best known for its use on cello and double basses, but improves the Wolf tone issue also on violins and violas. Please note that every instrument is unique and that what works for one might not have the same effect on the other one. Wolf tone eliminators are available in various weights. I would start with the lightest weight and observe the point at which the Wolf tone becomes controllable. Next advice. When it comes to your string setup, try following. Start by choosing a warmer and more focused sounding string with similar tension to that of your previous string. The following rule of thumb applies. Dark and focused sounding strings suppresses the Wolf tone, while brilliant, broader sounding strings support it. If you are still not successful in taming the wolf, instead of changing one string only, change the entire set for one which is entirely warm and focused, as a wolf tone is more prominent on brilliant and broader sounding strings. For violin, we recommend the Vision Solo with an aluminum wound D string or with a silver wound D string. However, if a violin requires greater radiance and focus, a rondo set is also a good option. For viola, try the Vision Solo. For bass, we recommend the Bel Canto. For cello, Versum Solo or Versum. Reducing energy in the main resonance is the key element in controlling the wolf tone. Therefore, increasing string tension helps to reduce the wolf tone. As a consequence, there might be little too much tension on the top plate, instantly leading to the loss of sound colors, but also taming the wolf tone. Just make sure you don't over-tension the instrument, so pay attention to its sound development over the coming weeks and months. A longer sound pause also might adjust your instrument as a way to tame the wolf. The effect is the same as applying higher tension to the strings. The next option is to use a darker sounding bow model. It helps to get rid of the wolf. Last but not least, a thicker sound bass bar could also help with the wolf tone phenomenon. Please consult a luthier or repairman when thinking about readjusting your instrument. This talk was just a little taster of the wide world of knowledge on strings and how you can optimize your playing enjoyment and performance. But of course, we don't want to give everything away all at once, and you have earned yourselves a little break. If you want to find out more in the meantime, visit us at stringtelligence.com or send us an email with your questions to ask@thomastic-infeld.com. We will try to answer them in the upcoming tutorials. Thanks and see you soon!